Welcome to the Seller Roundtable e-commerce coaching and business strategies with Andy Arnott and Amy Wees.
I think Andy has a question.
Yeah. So quick question. Dylan, I'm the private label guy. So people always ask me about like retail arbitrage and wholesale. I'm like, don't do that. That's a waste of time. But I've never really gone, deep into it. So, but the way that I'm coming at it is that like the reason why I really private label is because like, on the long game, you're building your own brand. If you go,
yeah.
Yes, honey, I'll be right in. So the whole thing is that if you're not building a brand, you're selling somebody else's products. When you're going for the long term, the long game, more and more of these wholesale brands are going direct to Amazon. So I'm just a little bit worried about like the long game for wholesale. That being said, guys, I'm going to bow out. As you can see, my daughter's so
yeah, no worries.
And the on the recording, and thanks a bunch, guys.
Cool. All right, Andy, have a good one, man.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks for the nice view of Hawaii, and enjoy your time here.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Later, guys.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's something I talk about a lot, right? Because again, there's pros and cons to each business model. Now, the pro with private label is that you have that brand that is easier to sell. Like you can exit a private label brand. It's much harder to do that with wholesale. Very hard to do that with wholesale. I've seen one for sale. The multiples aren't very good. And you have to have a lot of exclusive agreements. They don't happen as often. The way I approach this, because I think there's strategy involved. If you're getting started and you don't have a lot of money and you're like, hey, I want to get into business and I want to be able to do it full time very quickly. Wholesale is a great cash flow business. Wholesale is not a build your value of your equity and exit. Probably not going to happen. Like I've seen people be like, oh, I'm doing $1 million a year. I'm going to sell it. Good luck finding a buyer, because I can do due diligence during that due diligence process while trying to acquire you and replicate your business for free. It happens. So you're not going to exit a business, not a wholesale business at least. The way I think makes a lot of sense is if you're getting started, start with wholesale, get the cash flow, and then use that cash flow to launch private label products. That is your exit strategy. I think that makes a lot of sense. I don't have I've never done private label. I love the idea of private label. I'm definitely not one to be like retail arbitrage sucks, private label sucks, because it's not wholesale. No, each one has its pros and cons. It depends on what you're optimizing for and what you're trying to do. If you're like, hey, I love my job, I want to build a cool brand on the side, private label is probably great for you. To be honest, it's probably the best thing you could do. If you hate your job and you want to be working in a business full-time very quickly, wholesale is probably better. But again, the longevity of wholesale always comes into question. And it's a good one to always ask and be aware of what's happening. Like, do you have your finger on the pulse? A lot of brands, and it's really an assumption because it's not what I see. Like you have the assumption that brands are going direct to Amazon. A lot of the brands that I carry, that I have direct accounts with, did that, hated it, stopped selling to Amazon and want to use either themselves to do it or third-party sellers. A lot of them don't want to do it themselves. It's just third-party sellers suck, especially in wholesale. we ask for a lot. We want the lowest prices possible, and we want to negotiate 80% just because, and then we place a $300 order. Like if you approach it from a professional, don't be an Amazon seller. Don't be an e-commerce seller. Be a business owner. When you approach it from that standpoint, these accounts are easy to get and they're great, and it's easier to negotiate discounts where it makes sense. But a lot of brands, especially the ones we go after, because we're not going after like Nike, right? We're going after smaller brands, but still have good volumes and good followings, that they're not wanting to do it anymore because Amazon comes in, says, hey, you have MAP policy. That's great. We're not going to accept that, but we'll place a order for 100,000 units. So the brand goes, oh my gosh, that's 100,000 units. Yeah, we're going to sell it for a lot lower than we normally would, but it's a lot of money. Let's take it. And then they do that. And then it's miserable. And then they don't get another order placed for a year.
And not to mention, Amazon doesn't take good care of their listings or anything like that. And often they don't understand what they're getting into, because you can go into Vendor Central and you can have good control of your listings and everything. And a lot of vendors don't realize that. But honestly, these brands, when they have the wholesale model in mind, when they are brands that just want to sell to retail, Amazon included, they have no interest in going and selling direct to consumer. That is not what they are in this business for. If you study the older version of retail and you look at brands that come into the marketplace, their whole plan is not direct to consumer. That's a new thing. Direct to consumer is actually very, very expensive for brands. They are used to selling in large quantities to multiple retailers and just handling the wholesale stuff. They're not interested in writing out optimized listings and running advertising. They don't have to do that when they're selling to retailers direct. So as Dylan mentioned, if you go to these brands and you approach it like a retailer would in buying multiple units of a certain product, and knowing that you understand the market and you're showing them that you're educated and professional in this manner, there is no account that you cannot get. And let me tell you, every account that I've ever gone in, and basically I treat it like a job interview. So when I call up a brand and I am interested in selling that product as part of my store, I go ahead and I tell them exactly what about their product I love. I tell them what about their product concerns me about adding it to my store. And I basically tell them how I can improve things. And they're like, oh, can I get your number? Can we like set up a meeting? And I'm like, well, I don't know if I have time for all that, but great product. And, let's just get this order started. So bottom line, remember guys, that retailers, these brands, they're interested in selling to retail, because think about it. They're not selling one product at a time to an Amazon customer.
Exactly.
They're selling hundreds at a time. So that's what a lot of private label sellers miss out on, is they are going direct to consumer when they could be taking advantage of the ocean of retail, of which Amazon is only 4% of. So anyway, on that line, I think it's a great opportunity. Like you said, Dylan, yes, private label is great, but it requires intellectual property. It requires an advanced understanding of the marketplace. And it requires a lot of business planning. So if you're just wanting to get out there and start a business and get some cash flow going, yes, this is a great way to do so. And what's great about it versus retail arbitrage is that you can replenish. In retail arbitrage, it's very hard to replenish. You take the time to create a cool listing or, to list on a listing, and then you can't get more of that product. And you're like, oh man, I need to get more of it. Versus if you have these established relationship with vendors, you can get more as you need it and have that long-term relationship. So that is great.
Thanks for tuning in. Join us every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for live Q&A and bonus content after the recording at SellerRoundtable.com. Sponsored by the ultimate software tool for Amazon sales and growth, SellerSEO.com and AmazingAtHome.com.